If you know anything about me from watching my YouTube channel, it's that I enjoy a good cup of coffee while I'm in the woods. So when one of my viewers suggested I check out the Stanley Adventure Cook and Brew set, you know I had to have a look. If you're interested in learning more about it, stay tuned. So when I first looked at the Stanley Adventure Cook and Brew set online, I wasn't all that impressed, to be honest. After all, I already had the Aeropress, which I've declared on numerous occasions to be the best way to make a cup of coffee, whether you're in the woods or at home. So why would I want to buy this? It is a French press style, which makes a good cup of coffee. And I do have a French press that I take car camping with me, made of plastic, made by GSI. I think they've since upgraded it to something different now. But this has some interesting features that I didn't recognize right away. First off, in addition to being a coffee maker, it's a good stainless steel pot. Now, what that does for me, it means that I can take just one item to do two things. I don't have to take a pot to cook or boil my water with in order to use the Aeropress like I normally would. So this makes a two-in-one item. So what I have is a stainless steel pot. It is 32 ounces full, and there is a mark inside. I think it'll show better on the outside here. And it doesn't say 32 ounces, but that's what it's claimed to be. So that's the fill line. You really can't go any higher than that and use the French press on it. It has the swing out butterfly canteen style handles, which I have some thoughts on. I'll share with you in a minute. And this is the body of the French press maker. So it's in two parts. This will slide down. Now, anyone who uses a French press will recognize that there's a filter on the bottom, just like a regular French press, but normally there's just a center post or a center rod going up to the top. And Stanley has created a complete cylinder that will slide down in. Now, I think that does something very interesting for this, but I'll explain in a second. So on top is a lid, which is nice and friction fit. At the base, I just want to show the base of what I would refer to as the piston. There is a silicone seal, double seal all the way around. So that ensures that you're pushing all the grounds down and they're not seeping up through into the coffee you're drinking. The lid also has a double silicone seal right along its edge here. So that also ensures a nice friction close. Now inside of here, I'm storing the coffee that I'm going to be using for my brew today. And I'll talk more about the coffee in a minute. But what I think this does when you use this in combination with the pot is that once it's in the pot and you press it down and push all the coffee to the bottom, is that it creates a double layer insulated container for the coffee. So it should keep the coffee warmer longer. Now, it's not going to be an issue today. We've got to be about 20 degrees Celsius here in Halifax. But if I was to use it in the wintertime or any time in the fall or even earlier spring, I'd want to have my coffee kept a little longer, a little warmer. And the nice thing is, of course, if it did get cold, I could take that out and reheat the coffee over my stove or my fire or whatever else I'm going to use. So as you can see, it's clean. I have used it a few times. I am going to use it today. I haven't used it in a fire. I've used it over an alcohol stove because, like it has been all spring here in Halifax, we're under a fire ban. So alcohol stove is the only thing I'm going to be using for at least a while until we get a good heavy rain. But I've used it a couple times, and I am going to use it today. I'm going to use it to cook my lunch. Some nice spicy noodles with a Polish sausage or a kielbasa sausage chopped up in it. And then after that's all done, said and done, I'm going to make a cup of coffee with it. I have a few thoughts, but I'm going to show you this in action, and then I'll share those thoughts with you. Okay, I've got the Stanley Cook and Brew pot sitting on top of my Firebox Nano with a Trangio stove inside, a little windscreen around it, and it's sitting behind a rock so that it's as protected from the wind as I can get it. I have about 2 cups or 500 mils of water inside the pot. You can see this is the lid I mentioned that I'm put on top. It's what I bought from China on eBay. Just fits. Could fit a little bit better, but it fits well enough. If I didn't have that, I suppose I could use a piece of tin foil or I could fashion something else. It is just slightly larger in diameter than the standard GSI canteen cup, so any lids for that, like the lid that comes on the Stanley Adventure Cook Kit, the little one with the fold-out handle, won't fit. It's a little bit too big for that. But this seems to be working okay, so I'm just going to wait for this to come to boil, and then I'm going to put some lunch on. And lunch today, I think I can show you this. Still got it wrapped up in my bag. But there's some spicy Szechuan noodles, instant noodles, you know, the usual Mr. Noodles, but these are a spiced up version. And about a 2.5–3 inch piece of turkey kielbasa. lean turkey kebab, so that is also sealed in with some a vacuum sealer, and a dessert granola bar. So I'm going to put those in the pot once my water comes to a boil, because it is lake water, and I'll have some lunch and I'll bring you back. Okay, so I've got my water back on for a boil for making my coffee, and it occurs to me that I didn't mention when I showed bringing the water to a boil for the first time why I was using a metal lid instead of the one that came with it. Well, the Stanley information that came with the Cook and Brew set does state that the lid is made of a plastic that is heat resistant, but it also states that you should avoid exposing it to direct flame. So while it'll work on a gas stove or an alcohol stove such as I'm using today, if I was to use this on a fire or just push it into the coals of a fire for heating up, or suspend it somehow over a fire, then I'd be a little afraid that the flames would reach up and touch the top and the lid and either melt it or at least scorch it and make it a little bit too hard to hold on to. Even with just an alcohol stove, this does get very hot. And I think my water is coming to a boil. Great. So it gets very hot. So that's why I choose to have something like this for use, especially when I'm going to be using it on a fire. Okay, let me demonstrate how to make the coffee. So the first thing I'm going to do is take the coffee off of the stove that is hot. I have a small piece of silicone that's like a coaster that you might put a cup on, and I brought that. I could be using my bandana. I could also be using my pair of gloves for this. And that's one of the things I've noticed, is just how hot that can get. Let me snuff out the Trangia. Okay, so as with making coffee in a French press anyway, the coffee should be just below boiling. So if water boils at 212, the ideal temperature for making coffee is somewhere in the 190 to 200 mark. On a cold day, almost as soon as you take it off, it's going to drop the heat that quickly. But I'm sitting here in direct sunlight, so it is going to take a bit of... Oh man, that's hot. All right, so the coffee or the water is cooling off just a little bit. Now, the coffee that I'm using today, I'm going to talk more about this in another video, is from the Black Rifle Coffee Company. I know a number of you are familiar with them already. I was pointed out to me, I'd seen them online, but one of my viewers pointed them out to me, so I thought I'd give it a try, see what the coffee was all about. I have it coarsely ground, and you do want to use a coarse grind when you're using a French press, because it just ensures you're not going to get silt coming up through the filter. And I have roughly 4 tablespoons of coarsely ground coffee here to about 12 ounces of water. Now that's a guess. I'm trying to guess that based on where the fill mark is, but that's the appropriate ratio. Now everybody will vary that to their own tastes. And since my spoon is way over there, let me see if I can find a relatively clean stick. Now I'm going to let that set for, and that's still hot. Let that set for up to 4 minutes. That's the ideal way. Now, these are guidelines that are presented to people for use of a French press at home. Is it necessary to do it this way in the woods? Well, if you can, I suppose it ensures a better cup of coffee. If you're not that patient, then you can probably do this a little quicker. You could also make Cowboy Coffee in this, and that you could let the water to come to a boil and let the coffee roll in the water for about a minute, the way Morris Kohansky recommends. I've tried that. This actually makes a better cup of coffee this way. That's my opinion only, of course. You may like it the way that Morris Kohansky teaches. So wait about 4 minutes. And then we'll put the press in, and I'll just shorten this up for that time period and then bring it back. Okay, we're just about at the 4 minute mark, and I'll just take a second to show you what I'm using today. So I have a number of cook kits. This is part of, or an eating kit. This is part of an eating kit one of my daughters gave me a few years ago as a Christmas present. It's the Sea to Summit Silicone Collapsible set, and it comes with a plate, bowl, and mug. And they nest inside of each other and flatten down to about 1 inch thick in diameter. You can see how flat that will fold. And it's not bad. It keeps the drink fairly warm. It has a nice hard plastic rim on it instead of holding on to. The bowl and the plate have a hard plastic bottom on them. The only thing is it can be a little unstable because it's a little bit narrow at the bottom. And it's okay for using with this. I can't use this with the Aeropress because, of course, with the Aeropress you have to have a good stiff-sided cup that you can push down on with considerable amount of pressure. Not so with the French press, because all the pressing will be done inside of the pot itself. The other thing I have is, and again, no surprise, created a nice little stuff sack for it, so I can keep the the French press in, the lid, cup, spoon, coffee, everything else nice inside of this. And if I do get it dirty over a fire, then I've got something to keep my pack clean. Okay, that should be ready. That lid is still hot. All right. You can see the stainless steel, very fine mesh filter. I'll just push down on that and push the coffee through. Now that's looking good. The handles are at least cooled off enough now. If I can do this while you see. Oh, very nice. All right. I still have a little bit in my pot. Keep that warm for a few minutes. Oh, smells good. All right, I guess all that's left now is to do the taste test. So what are my thoughts on the Stanley Adventure Cook and Brew Coffee and Cook system? Well, there are some pros and there are some cons. As I mentioned in the early part of this video, one of the things I liked about it was that it was dual purpose. I could not only make a cup of coffee with it, but I could use it to boil water and cook in, which I did today. That's one of the advantages of it. It also means that it's going to take up less space in my pack, and that's always a good thing when there's a competition for a small pack. All right, what do I think about it in terms of comparison to the Aeropress? Well, there's a few things about this that I'm a little dismayed at. Number one, and this is a kind of a small thing, but I think it could have been avoided in the design phase. As I had pointed out, there is a fill mark for 32 ounces, which is great, but from there you have to guess where your water is. It would have been just as easy for them to imprint in 4 ounce or 6 ounce or 8 ounce measurements all the way up the side of the pot. And that would have made it a lot easier for measuring your water for coffee, for cooking, for whatever else you need a certain amount of water for. That's one thing they could have done. Another thing that I'm not so crazy about is the fact that it tapers down at the bottom. Not a big taper, just a little taper, which is great when you're trying to get it into a stuff sack that might be a little snug, but that decreases the diameter of the base of this. Now, not only is that less efficient for heating, but it means that I have to use the nano stove with the legs turned in order to support this. That makes the nano stove at its least stable. Now it still works just fine. It's just that had they given it the full width of the pot, then I would have just a little bit more room to put on top of the crossbars on the Nano or any other stove for that matter to give it a little bit more stability. One of the other things that is both a good and a bad are the butterfly handles on the side. They work well. I think I may have been using them incorrectly, and I'll show you what I mean. They have a small opening here, and I was trying to get my fingers in there erroneously to try to hold on to it. One, you saw just how hot it could get, even though it was just on top of an alcohol stove. Had I had a glove on, I would never get my fingers in there. My fingers almost get stuck as it is. What I failed to realize is I just grab it from the outside, and I could do that more easily with a glove. It still gets very hot, so you want to be careful. Use something to hold on to this. Probably the most efficient thing is to use the bandana right out of my pocket, but I didn't do that. I had that small silicone thing that I could use. A pair of gloves would have worked just as well. And of course they fold out of the way for storage, which is a great thing. So that's both a good and a bad thing. Make sure you use them properly, like I didn't do. The top, even though it is heat-resistant plastic, it gets extremely hot. And as I mentioned, I'm a little concerned that if it's exposed to direct flame, like over a fire, that it might damage the top. So I bought that small lid off of eBay, and I'll provide a link if you're interested. I'll provide a link to the information down below where I got mine. They're like $2 or $3 at the most, and you can get them in different sizes for different pots. It's very snug. I was just trying to get it off, and it's very snug on top. So it does take a little bit to get it off. There we go, got it off. Here's the other thing. Now that I've used all the coffee up, and I've got my cup of coffee waiting for my taste test, now that I've used all the coffee up, I have to take the filter out, the press part of the filter out, and rinse the coffee out of this and dispose of it correctly. Not a big deal if you're used to using a French press, but I'll tell you, the Aeropress makes that part of it so much easier. And you've seen me demonstrate with the Aeropress. Once you're finished, you just hold it over the fire if that's what you've got. You squeeze it, and the puck of used coffee and tiny filter just goes into the fire and disappears very quickly. Otherwise, if you want to take the grounds home so that you're not polluting the environment, it drops into a plastic bag just as easily. This is going to be more of a challenge to recover the grounds and take them home. Ouch, that is still hot. And that's one thing it does do. It does retain its heat quite well. One advantage this has over the Aeropress is its volume. So I can make up to 32 ounces of coffee. I think you're pushing your luck with that by having that much water inside of this, but I could make 32 ounces of coffee. That'd be enough for 2 people for at least one good sized cup of coffee each. The Aeropress, you can only make 1 cup of coffee at a time. You can make it concentrated and water it down a little bit, but you can only make 1 at a time. So if you're looking to share your coffee with somebody, this is a much better device for that purpose. Okay, I think I've said enough about this device. Let's do the taste, because that's what makes the difference. That's where it all counts. So use my Sea to Summit silicone cup mug. Oh, that's a good cup of coffee. Without question, that's a good cup of coffee. The question is it better than the Aeropress? No, it's not. It approaches the Aeropress, but the Aeropress still makes a nicer cup of coffee in my opinion. Will I continue to carry and use the Stanley Adventure Cook and Brew set? Yeah, of course. Again, the things that I like about it is the fact that it's 2-in-1, takes up less room. Especially if I'm out with somebody and I want to make coffee for the 2 of us. This is still pretty good though. A lot of that has to do with the fact that I'm using the Black Rifle Coffee Company coffee in this today. What's my final verdict? It's an excellent product. It really is. Price is comparable, maybe a little less expensive than the Aeropress, but for me, it won't replace the Aeropress as the best maker of coffee. But for you, it might be the one that you're interested in taking a look at. Okay, that's all I have for you today. But until next time, get out and explore. Take that path less traveled. It'll make all the difference. Bye for now.